Who are the gods of the reptilians? The Walking Dead. People have no idea of the abyss in front of which they stand, nor of the form of culture they bequeath to their children. In fact, most do not even care about such discussions. They prefer the illusion of a fake security and ignore the obvious thing that is literally right in front of their eyes. Imagine a chicken in the coop yelling to the rest of the chickens, "Hey, you know that truck with the people we see and he comes and takes the chicks every week? He doesn't take them to another coop like we think, but they cut their heads off, pluck them out, and sometimes the other way around, they package them and sell them for people to eat." I'm just laughing at the reaction of the others. "We told you not to believe everything you read on the internet. There are a lot of hoaxes. People love us, feed us, take care of us. They would never consume us. How did you come up with such a stupid idea?" Well, we know that the Cyclops of ancient Greek mythology did consume humans. And we know that Ulysses did away with Epiphanes, who was a Cyclops. I don't think I got the name right, but anyway, by blinding him and freeing his men. So anyway, how did they come up with such an idea? Now shut up because you're causing a commotion. I've got dividends in the trucking company too. The trucking company that is obviously trucking the chickens back and forth. And amusing if it wasn't deadly to the human chicken. Now, the blessed are the poor in spirit, as we believed, very conveniently keep chickens quiet, obedient and responsible in the coop, but no matter how much you have your head in the sand and your butt in the air, the tornado keeps coming at you. If you raised your head and faced it, you'd look at the obvious and then there would be a chance you could avoid it. But your ignorance, incompetence, or responsibility make it absolutely certain that you will suffer the extreme disastrous consequence of the tornado, since it'll find you with your head in the sand and hit you where you least expect it. Ignorance is a fool's bliss, but it does not save him, the person. With our thoughts and actions, we create the reality in which we and our children are called to live. For every action or inaction, there are consequences that we always pay here and now. When we irresponsibly allow others to define our lives, it's as if we surrender our lives and our souls to our children. This is the sole reason why a small minority, the elite, rule the many, the mass, and the chickens in the coop. The few always control the many. Today it's even more obvious that in other times, because we are running at the age of information, and we see that a small group of elites, multinationals, globalists, WEF, telecommunications, banking systems, etc., control and own the wealth of the planet. The foundation of this control is eternally the same: divide and conquer. Keep the chicken busy in ignorance, fear, and make them fight each other, while at the same time keeping the knowledge to yourself, clean and homely. Create a problem, create the something must be done reaction, and create and offer the solution. All this is summed up in the saying of secret societies and Pitt's Orbo ab Chao, order in chaos. And they create the chaos and offer the order, our class. The elite who have been using this method for millions of years are members of the same power, the same inbred race following a long-term plan for many hundreds of years. The little chicken, because it lives up to 50 years, cannot imagine, but it's not programmed for it, that there are beings next to it that live many thousands of years, and for these beings 600 years is less than 5 years of our years. The polite tribe loves the feudalism, fascism, and as we see, this system dominates the last centuries on the planet in one shade or another. Controlling the human herd by force is neither desirable nor easy, nor even necessary. Manipulate them and control them, manipulate the way they think, and they will beg you, demand you pass the measures that make them your subordinates. It's also an age-old success tip. If you want someone to do something, make them believe it's their idea. Humanity's mind is under total control, and most have no more perception than an average zombie. You control someone when they think and act in someone else's ways and wants. According to this definition, it's not a question of whether the human animal mind is controlled, but how many are not controlled. Everyone is controlled to a greater or lesser extent. Your mind is under control. Anyone who follows the current of the majority is under universal control. Education in any form is a mind control. The army controls. The army order is a constant word on everyone's lips. Blood-soaked religion controls the mind of their followers to the extent that they literally do not see what happens in front of their eyes. And the list of mind controls is endless, and the methods tried and tested. Quote, you humans are very skeptical, and that's good for us and for the real extraterrestrial species operating secretly on the planet. But even if you had photos like this, many of your kind would say it's a hoax, that I'm just a woman in disguise or something, which would be very offensive to me. You must understand that I cannot allow you to take pictures of me or my equipment. However, you have my permission to make sketches of me and my equipment that I will show you later. I can describe myself, but I doubt others of your kind will be able to imagine my true appearance through mere words, for the automatic denial of the existence of reptilian species and generally intelligent species other than your own is part of the mind programming. This is according to Lacerta Files, the interview of a reptile. End quote. They have complete control over you and know you are incapable of seeing what is right in front of your eyes, the obvious. The program you are running does not allow you to perceive what is happening, not somewhere hidden, but literally in front of your eyes. And say they don't show you. Obviously, all the cards are not on the table, and you are sleeping the sleep of the lamb in the fold, waiting for the butcher. Oh, all in all, I can't fault them. And the pictures you see are the definition of the conspiracy theorist wants to hide, and the reptilians won't let him, looking at the chickens literally in the snake's mouth. Now, how the unbelievable is actually true. There were and still are extraterrestrial races that controlled and control the human herd. There was the extraterrestrial race that the Sumerians called the Anunnaki, and in some other ancient texts they were called the reptilian race. Aliens have fought in the past with the possibly reptilian Anunnaki. Ancient texts and mythologies record the wars of the gods, quote-unquote, and these include conflicts between different alien races, as well as conflicts between some factions of the Anunnaki. There are many contemporary reports of people who say they saw humanoid beings with a face and skin that resembled that of a lizard or a frog, and with large bulging eyes. These are recorded indisputable facts and are now beyond doubt. Any one of us can see them as long as he has the required power. Reptilians are characterized as cold-blooded carnivores who seem to be much less emotional than humans and have great difficulty expressing friendship, although they are highly intelligent and highly technologically advanced. Here I have to say that this is an excellent description of their attitude and behavior. Flesh-eating, blood-eating, carrion-eating is their desire, since they are carnivores while man is not. Well, yes, we are carnivores. We do eat meat. Now, of course, they feed only on fresh meat, while humans only feed on meat that is cooked. Now, human homosexuality is also their own imposition, since they are naturally bisexual as beings. This has to do with the spinal energies, which is why Kundalini is worshipped and promoted so vigorously in all schools of yoga. Come on and make the connections. Buddha, Naga, Kundalini, etc. The resurrection Kundalini teaches human form how to behave, be humble, obedient, love, worship, respect. Now, the elite who control the planet and this cold indifference of theirs that seems so strange to us is because we believe everything we have to do with human beings. Generally, people like to believe without thinking, what to think with a busy mind. So they believe in religions and worship snake reptiles that they have been told to call, whatever their name may be. All the same and unchanging, since they come from the same reptilian source. Who are the reptilian gods? Modern description of reptilians matches description of ancient gods as reported in texts and myths. The Ubad civilization that emerged between 5000 BC and 4000 BC, even before the Sumerians, in the area where Iraq is today, had figurines of gods that clearly represented humanoids with reptilian features. The area in which they appeared, even the Ubad Sumerian civilization, are of fundamental importance throughout history. The Ubaid figurines represent depictions of gods who dominated ancient societies. The cultures of Central America had their own winged reptilian god, Quetzalcoatl. The Hopi Indians had the winged reptile god, Bacholinkonga. And Native American culture in general is awash with reptilian representations, such as the mysterious reptile-shaped mound in Ohio. The Native American Indians speak of their reptilian gods, and the Indians speak of their reptilian gods as the Nagas, a race of serpent demons, and the name means the creeping ones. The Egyptians have their own reptilian god, Knef, K-N-E-F, and the pharaohs are constantly represented with reptilian serpents. The Phoenicians had Agatho demon, a strange reptilian entity. In voodoo they have a god whom they call Dambala Wedu, and whom they represent as a serpent, and at the time of Moses they had the bronze reptile. Now the ancient British god was known as the dragon ruler of the world and was called Ho, H-O-U. From this word comes the English human, Ho man, human. The winged disc, the symbol of the Sumerian, copies of which existed throughout the ancient world, is normally represented by two serpents. Symbolism of the serpent reptile and its relationship to the ancient and present-day human animal gods, quote-unquote, abounds throughout the human farm. The Reverend John Bathurst Dean, in his book The Reptile Worship, writes, quote, one of the 5 founders of Thebes in Egypt was named after the Phoenician reptile god Ophion. Ophis in Greek means snake. So one of the 5 founders of Thebes in Egypt was named Ophion. Let's remember that the ancient Greeks were the ones that colonized Egypt and built the pyramids. The Thebes of Egypt is named after Thebes of Greece, which is an hour's car ride north of Athens. And that's also where the evangelist Luke is buried, in Thebes of Greece. Now, the first altar of this reptile god Ophion, the first altar erected to the Cyclops in Athens, was dedicated to Ops, this meaning Opis, the serpent deity. The reptile worship was so common in Greece that the martyr Justin Martyr, accuses the Greeks of introducing it into the mysteries of all their gods. The Chinese follow the process of selecting a piece of land where they will build a dwelling or a tomb, quote, with the help of the head, tail, and feet of various dragons that live under the earth, end quote. The idea of fire-breathing dragons and diabolical serpents that appear in legends and texts of all religions come from the reptilian gods who have ruled in the human farm for many thousands of years. They were the people of the reptile spoken of in ancient texts, even in the Bible, in which the serpent is a common theme. There is also the common myth of some holy place guarded by a serpent or dragon serpent. Beyond the reptile in the Garden of Eden, that is the evil and the devil, the Persians referred to the region of happiness and pleasure which they called Eden, or Eden, paradise, and which was more beautiful than all the rest of the world. It was the original abode of the first man before he was seduced by the evil spirit, which took the form of a reptile, to eat of the fruit of the forbidden tree of knowledge. There is also the fig under which the Krishna of the Indians of India sat on a coiled serpent reptile to teach spiritual knowledge to mankind. The ancient Greeks have the tradition of the island of the blessed of the garden of the Hesperides, in which the tree with the golden apples of immortality grew. The garden was protected by a dragon. The Hindu Naga reptiles were summoned by a Buddha in meditation one day when he was sitting under a fig tree, and the Naga wrapped itself around him and its heads formed an umbrella to protect him from the rain. The Buddha later, when he preached the two laws, one for humans and one for the gods, entrusted the Nagas to guard the law for the gods, which was secret. After centuries, the Nagas revealed him to the monk Nagahuna. Again, the reptiles possess the secret knowledge, quote unquote, that man should not know, and the reptiles guard it. All religions in creation of the reptilian overlords, as is every form of ism, and they all contain in their core some reptilian associated hiding or distancing the human animal from occult or forbidden knowledge. So wherever you hear love or light, especially white light, somewhere you have got tangled in the tail of a reptile. Another myth relates to the Indian king Ashoka, who, when he decided to demolish a pagoda, a Naga appeared before him in the form of a monk. The monk led him inside the pagoda and showed him the secret vessels, quote unquote. Seeing them, Ashoka was afraid because they were not made by human hands. So he decided not to tear down the pagoda. Another Hindu myth speaks of the sacred Mount Meru, which is protected by a terrible dragon snake. In the sacred Chinese books, there is also a garden in which the fruits that bestow immortality grow, and which is guarded by a winged serpent called a dragon. In the myths of ancient Mexico, their version of the Eve story involves a large male reptile, a serpent. Over and over and over, we see it. Same recurring theme of holy places guarded by terrible dragons, and that of a reptilian or reptilian being bestowing knowledge on ignorant, weak humans. Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado are some of the Earth's locations for reptilian underground bases. But underground worlds and cities, ancient and modern, abound across the planet. There are eyewitnesses who claim to have seen giant hominid humanoids in the Hall Schafflini catacombs in Malta in the 1930s. The catacombs were sealed after a group of students and their attendant disappeared. More than 30 huge and ancient tunnel systems have been discovered near Derinkuyu, Turkey. The list is long. The mysterious creature known as Bigfoot, a large and hairy ape-like creature, is supposed to come from inside the Earth. There is a widespread belief among UFO researchers that there are underground bases where reptilians work with the elite reptilian human hybrids they have created. It's difficult, if not impossible, to understand the manipulation of the human herd by a non-human race if one does not first understand the multidimensional nature of life in the universe. As many open-minded scientists now confirm, creation is made up of an infinite number of frequencies or life dimensions that share the same space, just like radio frequencies. Right now, you are attuned to the 3D world or third dimension, and you see it as reality. In other words, you are tuned to a specific station. But as with radio or television, all the other stations are broadcasting at the same time, and if you move the needle on the radio or change the channel on the television, you can tune into them as well. And when you do, the station or channel you were previously tuned to does not disappear. It continues to transmit, but you no longer hear it or see it because you're no longer on the same wavelength. This is also the case with human consciousness. Some people can tune their consciousness to other wavelengths and connect to information or consciousness that operates on that frequency. This is called psychic ability, but it is simply the ability to change station. This is what Don Juan calls a join point, and the warriors in their flawless behavior can move and fix it at will. From such a different station or dimension, the reptilian race controls the human farm, owning and controlling certain families in the station. The station from which the reptilians operate is the lowest level of the fourth dimension, the closest to the physical world we live in. It is the dimension known as the lower astral, the legendary world of demons and malevolent entities that reach back many billions of years into antiquity. It's from there that black magicians, demonic entities, and black magic rituals are invoked today. They actually call the reptilians of the lower fourth dimension. Some researchers argue quite convincingly that the intangible reptilians were able to enter our dimension through holes or portals in space-time created by nuclear tests and explosions that began in the desert of New Mexico in the early 1940s. Such holes began to form long ago, before the flood, when the world was at a technological level even more advanced than today, but it is a fact that radioactivity is their favorite energy. It's the energy that will bring them into contact with their own gods. Do you know who they are? In the constellation of Ophi, the snake, the reptilian gene seeding affects the entire universe, and probably not all of them are malevolent. As with humanity, they encompass a full range of behaviors, from freedom to absolute control. They like to consume human blood and are identified with the bloodthirsty demons of legend. Vampire stories are symbolic. In fact, Hollywood and literature very late decided to make them lovable. Now, what is the name of the most famous vampire? Count Dracula. The term count symbolizes the aristocratic crossbreeds, reptilian humans with the reptilian control from the lower fourth dimension, and the word Dracula obviously refers to the constellation of the dragon, or Ophius, the snake. Most ancient writers and astronomers of the Greco-Roman world called him Draco, but Hipparchus and Eratosthenes of the ancient Greeks called him Ophinus, which means office snake, and it matches the Latin for the other celestial office as Anguis, Coluber, Python, and Serpens. He was depicted coiled in the center of the shield of Hercules, and according to mythology, he was the great serpent that Athena, the goddess Athena, snatched from the giants during the battle of the giants, Gigantomachia, and hurled into the heavens. Hence, Sidus, Minerva, e Baci, or the monster that Cadmus killed and sowed his teeth, from which sprang an army of armed men. Unconnected with the ancient character, Julius Schiller imagined that the dragon stars represent the Herod murdered holy infants of Bethlehem, whatever that it may be, while others saw the ancient constellation as Ophius the Ancient, who misled the Eve in heaven. Caius thought of the great dragon worshipped by the Babylonians as the god Baal or Baal. The Swedish naturalist Olaus Rudbeck claimed around 1700 that the early Swedes considered the constellation dragon as a symbol for the Baltic Sea. Delitzsch wrote that the Hebrews regarded the constellation as a dragon or some sea monster in the Hebrew word tanim and the Aramaic tanin. Regarding the change in the position of the dragon in relation to the celestial pole, Proctor wrote in his Myths and Wonders of Astronomy, quote, "With some imagination, one may recognize the gradual shifting of the dragon from its ancient position of honor in certain traditions of the fall of the great dragon, whose tail draws the third of the stars of heaven," end quote. Revelation 15:4. In Persia, the dragon was Azdeha or Hashtehar, the man-eating reptile, while the Indians called the constellation Shishumara or Shimshumara, alligator or pigfish, like the dolphin. Some scholars identify the dragon with the dragon Tiamat, the personification of the primordial chaos in Babylonian mythology, who was defeated by the solar god Izdubar, the god Dionysus, whose foot trampled him. Rather, according to Rawlinson, it was Hoa or Kimmut, the third god of the Assyrian Trinity. As a form among the Chaldeans, Draken also bore wings, from which Thales the Milesian formed the little bear, so they disappeared in the newer representations. In general, the Chaldeans had a longer dragon, wrapping both bears in its coils, which survived in manuscripts and books until the 17th century AD under the combined title Arcto et Draco. Names of the dragon in Latin are also Monstrum mirabile, Monstrum audax, or simply Monstrum Germanic, Maximus Angius, or of Virgil, and Costus Hesperidum, hence guardian of the golden apples of the Hesperides. The dragon stars were of special interest to the ancient Egyptians, as were all the patrol stars and constellations, but they were given other forms. Some were part of the hippopotamus or the crocodile variant, and were thus depicted at Dendera and Thebes in Egypt. The hieroglyph symbol for the hippopotamus signified the heavens in general, while the constellation was a symbol of Isis, Hathor or Ator, the Egyptian Venus. According to Lockyer, the myth of Horus, which refers to the Hor-Sheshu, a people more ancient than the ancient Egyptians, is undoubtedly connected with the stars of the dragon, although later this myth was transferred to Mirus or Great Bear. The usual name among the Arabs was Al-Tinin or Al-Tuban, simple translations of the Ptolemaic dragon. In the Borgian celestial sphere, the term Aghavil Al-Tanin, the venomous dragon, appears above the stars B and C Draco, was thought by Asemani to refer to the whole constellation, as traditionally ancient astrologers believed that when a comet passed through Draco, it scattered poison upon the world. The Arabic name also passes into Old Turkish etanin and the variants Abin, Tabin, Etabin, Ibn, Abin, Tabin, Daban, Alanin, Atanino. Secondly, the Arabs called the dragon by the epithet Al-Shuja, the serpent, together with the Hydra, while for the constellation Ophi they had the name Al-Haya. Certain dragon stars were known in China as Yuan Wei, through which a great comet is said to have passed in the year 1337 AD. Of course, the creature itself was the official emblem of the country, the year of the dragon, but the Chinese zodiac dragon was somewhere in our Libra. According to British missionary Joseph Edkins, today's astronomical dragon corresponds to Chi Kung, the palace of the heavenly emperor, which is defined by 15 dragon stars forming an oval shape around the pole star. And from them, the stars X, O, and S of dragon are called Tai Yi. They are about 10 degrees from the tail of the Arctic and 22 from today's North Celestial Pole, and they themselves define this pole at the time of the beginning of the Chinese astronomy. Thus, the dragons, the reptilians, always dominated the royal palaces. Non-telepathic dysfunctional monkeys of Eden. Report from Puerto Rico, Mexico, Florida, and Pacific Northwest of monstrous blood-sucking chupacabras fit the description of reptile dominance. Their name means goat sucker because they suck the blood of domestic animals such as goats. The reptilians have close like pincers around their human race, mockingly calling us non-telepathic dysfunctional monkeys of Eden. Their material forms dwell underground and work in their subterranean bases with humans and human reptilian hybrids, scientists and military leaders. They surface and abduct, but the control they exert is mainly through absolute telepathic dominance over the bodies of human animals. The program of interbreeding through carnal contact as well as test tubes is described in the Sumerian deltas, and in the Old Testament the sons of God had intercourse with the women of men. These reptilian-human hybrids carry the reptilian genetic code and thus can be much more easily controlled by reptilians of the lower fourth dimension. These hybrids became the subsequent royal families and aristocracy of Europe, while thanks to the Empire of Great Britain, they spread throughout the rest of the world. These families have assumed positions of political, military, journalistic, banking, business power, and so the positions of power controlled by reptilians of the lower astral dimension in human form or human puppets of the same creatures. They use beings of every race, but mostly of Caucasian. As is widely accepted, there is an area of the human brain which is now known as the reptilian brain. It's the original part of the brain, while all its other parts are additional. According to neuroanatomist Paul MacLean, this ancient region of the brain is controlled by another prehistoric section that some of his colleagues call complex R22, from the English word reptile. MacLean says this R complex plays an important role in aggressive behavior, sense of personal space, ritual, and establishment of social hierarchy. Hierarchy is their characteristic, and as we know, every system is hierarchical or pyramidal, with the masses at the base and the elite at the top. It's precisely these patterns of behavior that reptilians and their hybrids exhibit, and enforce as normal. Astronomer Carl Sagan knew much more than he had let on, and had even devoted a large part of his career and not telling the truth. After all, the howls of the creeping pits were unrelentingly harsh. However, some of what he knew sometimes eluded him, as when he said that, quote, "It does no good to ignore the reptilian element of human nature, especially in our ritualistic and hierarchical behavior. On the contrary, this model can help us better understand the human species," end quote. That was his quote, his saying. In his book, The Dragons of Eden, he also adds how we use reptilian terms to describe the negative, cold side of human behavior, such as when we call someone a cold killer, or reptiles are cold-blooded and like to lay in the sun. Oops, who instilled the sunbathing in you morons. Sagan, whose name, if read backwards, gives the name of Nagas, which is, of course, the Hebrew word Nagas or Nagash, the reptilian deities of the Indians, and also the Hebrews, apparently knew a lot, but was forbidden to reveal it. As a human embryo transforms into an infant, it goes through several stages which are linked to the evolutionary stages of our present form. These include relationships with non-primates, reptiles, and fish. There's a stage, for example, which the embryo develops gills. The human fetus is very similar to those of birds, sheep, or pigs until the 8th week of gestation, when it follows its own evolutionary course. On rare occasions, the genetic instructions fail to remember the last script, so some babies are born with tails. They are called caudal fins and are created in the lower lumbar region. Most are removed on the spot by doctors, but in poorer countries where there is no medical care, there are people who live their lives with a tail. The truth is out there and is stranger than fiction. The right to publicize the truth always belongs to the winners, and after a while the truth may be born within you if you change your frequency. You watch from time to time and notice if the truth has changed, but it never does. Sometimes you happen to see some truth that you've been taught, shown on television or a newspaper, and somehow you're confirmed that you and many others share the same you. Well, that's not real. It's just programming and implants and control. Anybody the mob believes to be true is implants, memes, control program. The secret reality of these hidden species among us who consider themselves superior and us as their flock. Our work here at Terra Papers begins first by talking about the true history of mankind with a more realistic, logical approach to the origin of human race. The reptilian establishment is very carefully designed to hide their superiority behind a veil of cultural references and symbolism, music, art, mythology, history, literature, film, etc., using code words whenever it wants to refer to the origin and to the primal hermaphrodite Adam and the creation of the first blue-blooded unions, such as lilies, shells, serpents, reptile stars, light gods, angel devils, and triboles. Now, as the saying goes, you can't convince a believer of anything because his faith is not based on evidence but on a deep-rooted need to believe. Somewhere, something incredible is waiting to be known. Completely unusual claims require completely unusual evidence. The extinction of the species is the rule, survival is the exception. The prediction I can make, and the greatest certainty, is that the most impressive discoveries will be those which are not wise enough to foresee today. And these are quotes from Carl Sagan. If we are alone in the universe, then surely this is a huge waste of space. The general problem with Western technology is that God is made too small. He is a God of a tiny world and not of the God of the galaxy, let alone the universe. If you want to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first create the universe. Carl Sagan, who considered the possibilities arising from the existence of billions of stars in space and billions of neural synapses in our brains, Carl Sagan was one of the most famous and flamboyant non-believers, secularist, and critic, of course, of nuclear weapons, a defender of science's duty to investigate. That we should ask with infinite restriction, including religious doctrines. He died in December 1996. During his absence, the public debate about his favorite subjects, the fate of the planet, the beauty and mystery of the world, did not develop very well. And I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.